Alrighty guys, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me once again on the internet today. Today we're talking tax and immigration, your two favourite topics. Tax and immigration, they are always two great topics for a good rant. You know, it's good rants for Aussies all round. So, we're going to start off with the first video. I'm going to move it over, which is going to be this tax one. It's called Victoria's labelled the worst tax state. All right. I know some of you guys don't like Sky. You don't like Steve-O Price. But guess what? We're going to take a listen to him.
Nation's housing market. We know what a mess it is in and the difficulties facing buyers who actually want to get a foot on the ladder. I mean, any of us who've got younger kids in their mid-20s, I mean, the chances of them getting into a house are pretty slim. The issues around costs and taxes are particularly grim, especially for Victorians, because we've got many more taxes associated to housing than any other state. Everything from a vacant land tax, can you believe that, to the burden of stamp duty. Dominic Magnato is an architect whose online rants, or observations would be a kinder way to put it, have highlighted the madness of the local market and has struck a real chord on social media. Have a look.
So we'll wait a second, then we'll listen to this dude ranting. Let's talk about stamp duty. So in Victoria, it's 5.5%. That percentage does vary from state to state. So it's 5.5% of the purchase price of the property. And that is something that does get, forgotten about by a lot of people when they're planning their finances to go and potentially purchase a property. They go down to the mortgage broker, they've saved a bunch of money. He goes, oh no, hang on, actually you need to also consider in 50 grand or whatever it is for stamp duty. Throws a lot of people off. My view on stamp duty, it's the biggest rort ever. It is by long and far, it's a tax that is blatant tax, and it's a tax on human nature to want to have somewhere to live. How can you justify, especially with the property values today, 5.5%? A lot of people buying houses for $1 million, 1.5 million. What's 5.5% of 1.5 million? It's like 75 grand, 80 grand. Who's got that just sitting there? Yeah, there you go. There you go, Elbow and all your mates. Take 80 grand. I just had that lying in my back pocket. Cheers for the privilege of being able to buy a home for the family. I could understand it somewhat. Back in the day, we didn't have 1 billion taxes on everything. Think about that. Think about people, first home buyer, trying to buy a house for, I don't know, 700, 800,000 a unit somewhere. With the cost of living, with everything else going on, very hard to say. Finally gets there and has to fork out 35 grand to the government on top of that. 35 grand. Oh my God. No one's, as I say, no one really screams about it because we're institutionalized with all these systems. Stamp duty, never been a fan, never will be a fan. And the only time I could understand it, as I said, when maybe there wasn't all 1,000 taxes and we pay such high tax. We pay tax on everything here in Australia. A lot of hidden taxes and levies as well on all our products. GST is going to go up. We've got a cost of living going on. Bizarre. Bizarre in the lightest. That anyone can just think, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. I'm just going to give the government 50 grand for buying a house. Get stuffed. Maybe when houses were $100,000 and $50,000 whenever stamp duty was brought in, I don't even know when it is. Absolute piss take that they can take that much money from people as property values have inflated.
Victoria, the tax state. That's what actually should be on our number plates. If a developer decides to build a project, they're hit with a contribution fee, a tax. If the average mum and dad buy an investment property, they're hit with land tax. If the average person buys a property and it stays vacant because they can't rent it, they're hit with land tax and vacant land tax. If you're going to buy a home, your dream home, the government says, oh, we need some stamp duty, tax, more tax.
Dominic.
And also, you put on council rates on top of that. You will get people saying, well, property investors, because apparently, as you said, mum and dads, I know people hate that terminology. Apparently people who have put some money in property are evil in Australia. Everyone is Gina Reinhart, Clive Palmer. I don't do it anymore. I used to be in it. It's the biggest tax rort you'll ever participate in. Once you own an investment property, especially in Victoria, you'll be taxed out of your butt. That's it. If you bought property, so I'll talk about this 20 years ago, yeah, okay, maybe it's still a good idea. You buy an investment properties now, you've got rocks in your head. Even 5 years ago, rocks in your head. That just doesn't pay off. The yields are too low. The taxes are through the roof. Land tax isn't just... Land tax has always been there. They've put the COVID levy on it, which is a multiplier. And I don't know exactly how that works, but land tax has just shot up through the ceiling for a lot of people. In some cases, double, tripled. It used to be based on a threshold system where it was up to X amount, hundreds of thousands of dollars, where it was the property value was not allocated to land tax, and now it's right down to 50,000. So more or less, you pay land tax on every dollar of land value that the property has. So land value, by the way, not property, land value. Biggest rort ever. People say I'm a landlord shill. I'm actually not. I think it's the dumbest. I think it's the dumbest thing ever. It's like the Bitcoin of 2008, and people are like, you know what? Oh, I should have bought Bitcoin back in 2008 because if I did that, I almost did it, G-Man. I almost went and did it. We all know someone like that. You almost bought 500 Bitcoins. And if I would have just held them for 17 years, because I almost did that, G-Man, I would be a billionaire. And that's what property investing is and was. Now, it'll have its day again, I'm sure. But that gravy train or those good returns of the 2000s and maybe the start of the 2010s, that's it. That's it. Government's definitely got their hand in it. So as I said, I'm not a landlord shill. It's anyone who tries to have a go and try and set themselves up for the future, especially through property here in Victoria, just know that the government's going to have their hand in your pocket the whole time.
It sums it up perfectly and joins me in the studio. Thanks for coming in.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for having me.
I know why it resonated. Every time that I would go out socially, people want to run through those real estate taxes and ask me why they're there. Well, we know why they're there. The government's broke. The government's broke. So they attack real estate.
That's right.
Are we the worst taxed state in the country when it comes to those?
We are the worst tax state, Steve. I travel interstate regularly. There's such optimism interstate. And in fact, they look at Victoria to peck us like crows. We are taxed to the hilt. I get calls every day from the average mum and dad, friends. They're in despair. They're stressed. They fear. For the first time ever, they suddenly realise these taxes aren't directed towards greedy developers or unscrupulous builders. For the first time ever, they're going after mum and dads.
First time ever. This has been going on for ages, mate. This hasn't just started yesterday. And once I said, I know I've got a lot of viewers who hate property, people who have one investment property or whatever it is, mum and dads, and you're all, again, the devil, you're Clive Palmer, you deserve what you get, blah, 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 blah. But notwithstanding, contribute a lot to tax in Victoria and overall in Australia.
I'm old enough to remember the rust bucket state of the 90s, and I've often compared it. I wasn't going to be unkind enough to suggest you were that old. People were fleeing Victoria for that very reason, that they were being taxed out of existence. I mean, there must be evidence that people are leaving this state or encouraging their children to go and work interstate because they know that they're never going to be able to get into the property market.
Steve, their jobs are on the line. If you can't physically build, you can't apply your trade, and there's no hope, they're getting into planes and they're leaving, but it's causing distress. It's destroying families. It's breaking the whole fabric of society. They're moving to places they don't want to go. They're leaving home. It isn't just about the affordability of homes, but the whole of Victoria is changing. It's not the Victoria we recognise anymore. It's just fear.
You pulled all those taxes together. Is there one or two that you think really stick in people's craw? I mean, from where I stand, a lot of my mates, it's land tax.
The thing is, land tax, that one's politically popular because people don't want people to do well. So they're like, tax them. So those ones get through. So you got your Labor voters out there. And once again, I'm politically ambivalent in this country. I couldn't give two shits, left, right, whatever. People say, oh, well, if you're not left, then you're right. No, I'll look at life my own way. I don't have a certain methodology or philosophy based on somebody else's opinions. Critical thinking, guys. Don't just take on other people's thoughts on the world. Oh, well, Karl Marx and all this. Yeah, have your own view. Okay. Land tax is very popular because people don't want people to have stuff and get ahead in this world. And it's hard to own a property. So they cheer people getting taxed on property. So that's fine. That's never going anywhere. People say, oh, they need a reform tax, get rid of tax. That isn't what the government does. They just put on more taxes on top. They'll be sitting in a back room somewhere thinking about how to tax people who aren't investors. It'll be on the primary place of residence next. Mark my words, they'll come for everybody.
We've always had land tax, and developers, mums and dads, they've always accepted it. But this vacant land tax, it's criminal. I mean,
Explain to our national audience how that works.
Well, at the end of the day, if you aspire to buy a block of land, the government says, we're going to regulate your dream. If you don't build within 12 months, they will tax you above land tax for having your land vacant. If you renovate or extend your home, you have a period of time, a couple of years. If you don't build or renovate or finish your home, they're going to hit you with a vacant land tax. So they are now controlling the way we live. If you have a beach house, you better occupy it 4 weeks of the year or we're going to hit you with a vacant land tax. This isn't about housing affordability. It's about revenue raising.
I see cranes on the horizon.
Of course it is. They don't care about the people. People think that the government care about you and they're doing things for you. No, they're just thinking about revenue streams. It's like a business and they need their revenue, which is us. We're the revenue stream. We're the small guy, the individual, the small business owner, the payee worker, someone who wants to have a home, someone who might want to invest some money into a property. That's who they go after because guess what? You can't fight back with it. There's no legislating. Then they give special treatments and exemptions and all that sort of stuff for large business because they can lobby. They can say, well, you know what? We're going to pack up and take our 10,000 jobs or 20,000 jobs. They have leveraging. We don't have no leverage. It's bend over, spread your cheeks, everybody.
There is some building going on. But when I look closely at it, what it is the state government using Victorian taxpayers' money to build government housing.
But at the end of the day, Steve, the pipeline has stopped. As architects, we know a year in advance we have work. The phone stopped ringing a year ago. There is no work on the horizon. So we're fearful today, but in 12 months, it's going to get scarier. So, yeah, I don't even think they're building social housing. I don't see any housing.
What's the solution? Do we need a housing summit? I mean, forget about the rest of the country. Victoria, is the government prepared?
Victoria is stuffed. A lot of people are leaving, not just people in the building trades looking to get work. I know quite a few people who have left the state, don't want nothing to do with communist Victoria. The Joint is a complete basket case. We're the communist capital of Australia. Socialism. Now, I want to talk about social housing. I have no issue with social housing. There are a lot of other things that the government spends its money on that are complete waste. Social housing, I think the government should support the vulnerable using the taxpayers' money, people's money. I think that is probably a good way to use our money, not wasting it on a whole bunch of other shit, sending our money over to other countries, Ukraine and Palestine and whatever we're doing. providing aid to countries when we have people lying on the streets and lying on the city on the footpath here in Melbourne. I think that is a good use of our money. All right, let's move on to the next one because I'm ranting about this. We're going to talk about immigration now. And everyone's favourite, Paul Murray.
I'll talk here about Australia yet again lowering its standards about some of the people that are coming into the country. And by that I mean, on Tuesday of last week, the Assistant Immigration Minister, Matt Thistlethwaite, ordered the minimum test mark for someone to have functional English to be lowered for some exams for prospective migrants. This is something that is the first time it's happened in about 10 years. It's dumb idea. Let's see if the following agree with me. Lee Hansen, of course, Pauline's daughter, and got a great future leading certainly the people in Tasmania, and of course One Nation. Overall, the wonderful Daniel Wild, who's always a great chat from the IPA. Lad and lady, lovely to see you. Lee.
That's the thing about One Nation. Though they were marketed as a bunch of crackpots. I remember growing up in the 90s and Pauline Hanson was basically a running joke because she cared about Australia and keeping the fabric of Australia intact. They called her racist and all those sorts of things. Pauline was spot on. She needs a national apology. All she cared about was keeping Australia preserved. We don't live in Australia anymore. We live in the Middle East. It's just in Australia. We live in India. It's in Australia. We live in China. We have this melting pot. We have all these issues being imported from other countries. We're getting involved in the politics of conflicts in all over the world. Why are we not worrying about shit that's happening here? That's the main thing. And so the older I get, the more I start agreeing with her. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think.
Let's start with you. Why on any earth would they want to lower the bar to make sure that any good, family-loving, highly skilled human being comes here but isn't able to speak to the people when they get here?
I'm going to answer that. Thank you, Paul. Is it Pete or Paul Murray? Well, whoever, whatever his name is. All right, I'm going to answer it for 5 points, mate. They're importing votes and they're importing revenue. And the more they lower the standards, the more people that can come in. It's all right. You got 5% out of 100. Yeah, we'll let you in. No problem. And that's how we end up where we are now. I have no issue with people coming and wanting to have a better life as long as they assimilate into society. Sure, bring some of their cultural heritage and all that. We have great food and all that sort of stuff here. But don't go into your little enclave and not be a part of it or want to be a part of it. And actually be negative and not like Australians. You come to the country and you hate Australia and Australians when you have a safe life full of opportunity. That's one thing I've never really understood, especially the second generation of migrants. They're like, yeah, well, I'm from insert X country. That makes me better than you. It's like, no, hang on. You've come from a country with conflict. Your parents have fled, and you think that makes you better than us. They know your place. You're taking everybody in, arms open, and all this shit starts. But it's about revenue as well. It's more migrants, more revenue, more visas. It's a factory.
Well, Paul, let's name it for what it is. It is vote harvesting.
Yes.
Pure and simple, and there is no other way. This is just... it has frustrated so many Australians to hear about this. Why would you lower the English proficiency in visa holders other than purely to vote harvest? Now, you need to think about this. If I understand the figures right, and by lowering the scores, this means that to pass, it's only a 21 to 26% average pass rate. Now, when I went to school and university, that 21 to 26% score was not a pass. It was a fail, pure and simple. You've also...
I'm not sure if she's mixed up the wording there. You mean pass score? So if the pass score is anywhere between 20 and 25%, they're still getting through. That's the average rate of the test. And they're letting people in. Isn't the whole idea of migration is to bring people who can contribute to the country through business or work, etc.? How can you do that if you cannot speak English? And I understand English is a hard language to learn. It'd probably take years and years to be proficient. But isn't the whole point that they come and add value? No, it's not. It's just importing people, importing bodies, and they'll pay tax and they'll contribute to GDP by buying food and essentials and all that sort of stuff. That's all that is.
Then got to think about, well, what's the impact of this decision? How is this going to make an impact on here in Australia? Now, if you move to this country, we are an English-speaking nation. If you do not speak English, what does this mean? It means you will struggle to assimilate into our culture, and you will stick within your communities, and you will not integrate it.
Correct.
In addition to that, it's going to put pressure onto our schooling system and education system as well. Now, I've worked at a university. You think about people, work visa holders, if they can't speak English and they're teaching our students, whether it be primary, secondary or university sector, the education outcome of our kids as well is going to struggle. We've seen this.
Well, think about this. Think about if people who have been to university or have done some sort of study and you have to do group assignments with international students. Complete nightmare. You carry them. It's been a thing for years. I was doing this almost 20 years ago. Carrying people through their studies. That's why they pair you up with them in these group assignments, to get them through. No contribution. A lot of time, no work ethic, no effort. If they give you something, if you're if you've taken it upon yourself to try and get the project done, that'll submit to you rubbish, end up doing their work anyway. That's the plight of group projects. So what does that tell you? Then they go into employment, and they're completely useless. I think a lot of the time universities couldn't give two staffs. Don't get me started on this. I've got myself started actually. The university is just a huge big business, and they import these people to rot them and pillage wealthier individuals or people who will sacrifice basically all their finances for the rest of their life to buy a degree in Australia, to try and get in the country as well and get residency through that way on student visas. That's all it is. I'm saying it for what it is. Selling degrees. That's all it is. Pay for it. The wealthy parents come and pay 5 times or 3 times the amount or whatever it is of what a local student will pay. Why is it so much then? That's exactly right. Pillaging. All right, I'm not going to get onto that anymore because that's another half an hour topic of me yelling and screaming.
We know we have issues with our NAPLAN results and our literacy results in Australia as well. So there will be knock-on impacts from this, and it simply should not be happening.
I agree completely. And again, look, I know somebody's going to write me an email saying, 75 years ago, my parents came out here, couldn't speak the world was very different, and certainly the attitudes of many people that have come over a lot of different periods of time are very different as well. But Daniel, again, I think what Lee's saying, and she's saying the quiet part out loud, and as I said, that electric fence, bang, 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 who cares? Which is that, of course, we saw at the last election, right? If you have any conversation about the fact that 1 million people have come into the country at a time when it's harder than ever to find a rental property, you can spend hours in the back of an ambulance, because that's why people like myself, people like yourself, people like Lee have talked about the numbers coming in. That was deconstructed by the Labor Party and their mates in the media as, that was an ooga booger on every single person who's ever come to the country. And in some areas became quite successful. I mean, it was sort of said back to people when they were having discussions in and around, say, the Parramatta electorate. So the reality is that just like spending, and I'm going to get to this in a second here, it feels like one of these horses bolted moments. But bugger that, I'm still going to point out that in this case, the horse and the tests it is being put through is lowering the standard.
That's exactly right. It is lowering the standard. How can you say it's not? It's got nothing to do with being racist to the people coming here. If anything, it causes racism from some sections of the community because they don't want all these people here because they are coming and unfortunately they're diluting, right? They're diluting the quality of life for everybody who is already here. We need to stop it. But it's not going to stop. They're going to bring more international students in on top. It's just to fudge the numbers. They don't give two stuffs about us. We have shortage of housing. Rentals, vacancies are very low. Prices are going up. It's hard for people to buy houses. They import hundreds of thousands of people in each of these major cities per year Not all those people are Uber Eats drivers. A lot of these people have money. They're ambitious. They're professionals. They're doctors and lawyers and finance people and accountants. They have money. Or they have the ability to earn good money. They will be your competition. They will be buying houses. There's just not enough to go around. And you get called a racist for calling it out. It's got nothing to do where they come from. That's the argument from, one-eyed bleeding hearts who don't have to deal with the outcomes of this. You get I'll call them wealthy progressives who live in isolated inner city blue chip suburbs where these migrants don't go. Oh, let them in. Let them in. We're a big country. What's everyone being so racist? While they're sitting in their house in Camberwell or Hawthorne. And the western suburbs and outer south are getting completely flooded with more and more people. And the infrastructure's buckling, etc.
Murder the metaphor here and imagine Mr. Ed is not coming to Australia.
Well, exactly right, Paul. And I think Lee is spot on, and I've just got a couple of points to make. I mean, the lowering of the English standards comes at a time when, sort of what you're alluding to there, we are being put through as a nation the biggest social experiment that we've ever seen with this mass migration, the sheer volume of the numbers. But don't forget, that's underpinned by a divisive ideology of multiculturalism. Which presupposes that we don't have one shared culture as a nation, but there are many different cultures that will need to coexist. Now, I'm perfectly fine with having different ethnicities and different religious faiths existing in Australia, but it's got to take place within our shared common culture and set of values.
Correct.
And English is fundamental to that for all of the reasons that Lee pointed out. But one additional reason, which is that language is also a vehicle for ideas.
It isn't so much language, it's also attitudes. People coming from these countries, they bring their issues with them and they hate the locals. They want nothing to do with you. They don't respect anything that happens here, our rules, our way of life, our culture that we have. People say Australia doesn't have a culture. Yes, we do. They don't respect it. I'm not saying all, but they don't want nothing to do with it. They're not going out of their way to try and be a part of it, be part of the community, assimilate into the community.
If you don't understand English or you don't understand the language of the country that you're living in, you're going to struggle to understand the ideas that underpin that nation as well. So, this is just another example of how, as a nation, we're becoming balkanized, we're becoming separated from one another. This is a government that tried to separate us by race with the voice to parliament, and now it appears they're doubling down on this by watering down something that should be uniting us, which is a shared language.
Now, as you know, it's only when you are sick of talking about it that people are starting to understand it, all right? That was the old logic behind highly successful political things like Stop the Boats, right? So I have said it almost as many times, but I will continue to talk about it, which is if your country's not going to deal with the income it takes and it's not going to deal with the spending it takes, then the credit card bill is going to get into an unimaginable position where the single biggest thing before you get to health, education, welfare and everything else is the servicing of the debt. Remember, top 10 expenditure in Victoria right now is the servicing of the debt. Okay, so while modern monetary theory means no one will ever call the debt in, you still have to make the minimum payment, okay?
That's right. That minimum payment is going up and up and up. And I'm not confident at all that debt will ever be in control under the Labor government in Victoria. It's just all about borrowing money, spending money to prop up the public sector. That's my opinion on that. And I'll get people who tell me I'm a Labor bashing channel. Look at the state of the world. Look at the state of the country we're living in. Oh well, no, that was Scott Morrison did that, and now Albo's trying to undo it. No, things have gotten a lot worse lately, and they're going to continue to get worse. We're going to have all this nonsensical and all this getting involved in overseas politics and all that, with Albo doing all that stuff. trying to appease the masses here, trying to appease and get votes from the progressives here.
And that is billions of dollars that you are not putting into all of the stuff people care about. But we also know the politics of Australia now is we don't want taxes to go up. Fine, I understand, because you've got to pay those. But because we talk about the triangle of dependence, where you're either got your hand out for welfare, or you got your hand out because you're working for the government, or you got your hand out because the government's the biggest client, spending. You never cut a dollar in spending because that triangle will weaken itself. Well, a suggestion is that we should be increasing the GST. Now, remember, this might bring a few $1 billion, but nowhere near what they really need when we are $1 trillion in debt.
I think there's no doubt that our tax system is broken and it's time for a bold change.
Don't get me started on this bloke, because this will go for another half an hour, and I made a video on this, so go and check it out. I did a video on the GST. Go check out my channels a couple of days ago. What I'll do, actually, I'll pin it here at the end, and if you guys want to watch it, you can. I've given my thoughts on that particular situation. All right, see you all in the next one. Thanks for listening to my rants. As always, put your comments and all that sort of stuff, and let's discuss. Cheers.